Have you ever wondered what it might sound like to write a video game theme using a formula that's over 300 years old? It might sound silly, but this is something that I actually use to overcome something that every creative musician faces: writer's block. And honestly, I'm pretty excited about what came out of it. If you're a musician in any sense of the word, you've probably had the desire to create, to tell your own story through music, but along the way, you've probably experienced something that a lot of us experience, which is writer's block. Not really knowing where to start, or maybe you get started and you don't know what to do next. This piece of music that you're listening to is actually something that I wrote after experiencing a lot of writer's block, and I broke free from that by using one of the same formulas that composers like Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven used: binary form. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I used binary form to write my own original piece of music, and how you can use similar formulas to write music of your own. Let's get into it. If we haven't met before, my name is Clement, and I am a jazz pianist and composer. And when I started composing, one of the things that I was most obsessed with was romantic and contemporary classical music, as well as film scores. And when I was around 13 or 14, I really wanted to start composing on my own, so I asked my parents if they would get me a copy of Finale. It was probably Finale 2007 or 2008, and I still remember when I got this, this CD for Christmas, and I stuck it in the computer, I booted it up, I installed the program, and then I was finally greeted with a blank orchestral score. I started writing something, in a bassoon part or something, but I just remember this frustration of not knowing what to do next. And you've probably felt something like that too. You wanted to sit down, play something that was your own, and you felt like you just didn't know what to do. You didn't know where to start. You didn't know what to do next. This was my first real experience with writer's block, and what I've learned since then is that usually when you're feeling writer's block, there's one of two things happening. The first one is that sometimes you just need to sit down and stop caring about what other people think, and you just need to start creating. And honestly, usually it's that first part. But the second one is that you literally don't have the skills to know how to create. And so for me at that time, it was definitely that second one. I knew enough to be able to plunk out a few melodies on the piano, but I didn't really know how to write a full piece of music. So what do I mean by gaining the skills to create music? Well, what I mean is that there are actual formulas that composers use in order to create music, so that you never have to sit in front of a blank sheet of paper or a blank screen and say to yourself, I have no idea where to start. And there are, of course, formulas used in any genre to get started writing, but I've always been interested in classical formulas used by composers like Mozart, Beethoven, and Haydn. So recently, as I've been exploring a lot of these different types of classical forms, I came upon a type of form that I had never used to compose a piece of music before: binary form. So I decided to learn binary form and then start writing with it. So what exactly is binary form? Well, bi means two. So binary form is a form that has two parts. And usually in music, when we are talking about parts of a song, we label them with letters. So binary form has an A section and a B section. And typically in the classical period, these two sections were repeated. So you would have an A section that was repeated, and then you would have a B section. Now, each of these sections had some things that would typically happen, at least in the classical period. And that's that the A section would start on a 1 chord in the key. So if the A section starts on the home key, usually by the end of the A section, we're landing on a 5 chord. And then the B section typically would start on a 5 chord or something unstable, and then we would finally make it back to our 1 chord. Now, the A section was typically a very strict structure, so it would usually be a much more common type phrase, and then the B section would be something a little bit more loose. And what I mean by that is a lot of times it wouldn't be a strict 8 measure or 16 measure phrase. You might have 7 measures or 5 measures that would create some instability, and then we would finally make it back to our 1 chord. And another thing that's really important with binary form is, like I said before, a lot of times the sections would repeat. So you wouldn't want an A section to feel too repetitive, or else if you repeated it twice, it would just be boring. And the same thing with the B section. You wouldn't want to repeat anything too much, or else it could end up being a little bit boring. So each section has to be clearly contrasting. It has to be different so that the listener will have a lot more to listen for, and will have some things that are coming back. Each section is being played twice, but then also when the section changes, it's very clear that the section is different. So now that I've shown you some of the features of binary form, I'll show you how I use this formula to write a piece of my own in a more modern cinematic style. So let's first listen to a little bit of my composition, Road to Olympus, and then I'll walk you through some of the techniques I used and how I went along with the binary form formula and some of the more subtle ways that I broke free from it to make it more in a more modern style. And then here's the top. Here's the B section. So that is the first part of Road to Olympus, and it's the part where I'm using binary form. And I just want to highlight a few of the different ways that I am using the binary form. To start out with, I am using a very strict sentence form for the beginning. And I won't go deep into what sentence form is, but basically what it means is that we have two measure phrases, and then we have a 4-measure phrase that's broken up into kind of smaller bits. And it makes it feel like we are having kind of a speeding up motion. So the first phrase is this, and then we have another phrase that kind of answers it. And notice how I use both of the same chords both times, but the melody is a little bit different. So second time it goes down, right? And then after this, what we call the presentation of the melody, we have this continuation. So what that basically means is that we're breaking free from the B flat where we're starting, and then we're going to move into something that's a little bit more energetic. So instead of having a chord every bar or having the chord change every 4 beats, it's now going to change every 2 beats. So we have right? And then once again, we need to come back to the beginning, and we need to repeat it. So, and notice how nothing repeats too much. We do have this phrase that's different, and we do have the rhythm that stays the same, which is, but the phrase from the first line to the second line changes quite a bit. Another thing to notice is that even though we're being much more adventurous with the harmony in the middle parts, we're still coming back to the 5 chord by the end, which is a hallmark of this binary form, right? So we have both sections, both A sections that are basically the same and are really tight, meaning that they are clear 8-measure phrases. And then we have the B section. So this B section is just 5 measures long. It's not 8 measures. It's not a clear, clean, neat 8-measure phrase, but it feels like it's kind of rushing toward the end. And another thing to notice is that I'm putting the chords kind of in weird places. And at the end of the phrase, I'm using this very very heroic sounding motion from E flat to F to G. And what this does is it kind of fools us into thinking that we're done. We've arrived somewhere. But the thing is that we haven't arrived. We've arrived in somewhere where we're not supposed to end up. We originally started in the key of B flat, but we've arrived in G. So in order to resolve that, we have to go back to B again. And then we have a series of sequences or repeating patterns that finally get us back to B flat. And notice how the way I actually arrived back at B flat is I found the flat 6 chord. So I said, well, how can I find my way back to B flat? Well, I follow the circle of fourths, and then I find something that's related. I say, oh, okay, I'm finally on something that is related, flat 6. I know what to do with. It's a very common way to get back to 1. A lot of times it's called the German 6 chord, but we won't cover that too much in this video. And then once I've found my flat 6, I can go to 5. And I know I wrote it here as C minor 7 over F. The reason why I did that is because it really functions as a 2-5-1, and really all that's happening in the bass is just some 5-2-5, 5-5-1, right? So it really is just a 2-5-1 for my jazz listeners. It's a 2-5-1 getting from the C minor 7 to the F7, and then finally back to B flat. And finally, we're back to our home key. So I'll play that one more time from the B section. At this point, I had a complete binary form, but it was around a minute long, so not enough to be a complete piece. But this is pretty typical with binary form. Usually it's not the entire piece, it's just part of it. So I had a decision to make. Do I want to make this more of a theme and variations, where I just repeat the binary form over and over and change things about the orchestration or the melody? Or do I want to write a development and then come back to the binary form to finish out the piece? And I decided to do the second one because I didn't really want to write a symphony. I didn't want to write a big thing. But once again, this was a way for me to just get something out onto the page, to overcome that writer's block, and to have a way to get started writing. And then I can figure out what to do with them. Usually it's just that first part that takes the most effort, just to get out of our head and start writing. So let me play the rest of the piece for you so you can see how it develops, and then how it comes back and how it ends. If you're a pianist who wants to be more creative, but you've always felt stuck, maybe you don't really know where to begin, I just want you to know that creativity doesn't usually start with inspiration. A lot of times, especially when you get into doing it more, it starts with having some structure, having a framework that you can actually use to get started. Most of the time, that's what happens for me. Maybe in some few cases I can say where I've had a burst of inspiration and I have actually written something, but most of the time it comes down to sitting down and having some sort of assignment to give myself. Something to get myself started, to get the creative juices rolling. If you've been told that creativity is just for the naturally talented or the elite, it's definitely not. It's something that you can start working on today, bit by bit, and that's what I am here to help you do. So if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and let me know what you enjoyed about this video. This is a little bit different than videos I've made in the past. So let me know if you enjoyed this video in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.